No, I don't think there's a Stargate there. I don't think there's a Stargate there. But the Piri-Reis map is a world map compiled in 1513 from military intelligence by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri-Reis. Approximately one-third of the map survives. It shows the western coasts of Europe and North Africa, and the coast of Brazil with reasonable accuracy. Various Atlantic islands, including the Azores and Canary Islands, are depicted, as is the mythical island of Antillia, and possibly Japan. The historical importance of the map lies in its demonstration of the extent of exploration of the New World by approximately 1510, and in its claim to have used Columbus's maps, otherwise lost, as a source. It used 10 Arab sources, 4 Indian maps sourced from the Portuguese, and 1 map of Columbus. More recently, it has been the focus of pseudo-historic claims for the pre-modern exploration of the Antarctic coast. Section 1. Description. The map is the extant western third of a world map drawn on gazelle skin parchment, with dimensions reported as 90 centimeters by 63 centimeters, 90 centimeters by 65 centimeters, 86 centimeters by 60 centimeters, 85 centimeters by 60 centimeters, 87 centimeters by 63 centimeters, and 86 centimeters by 62 centimeters. These discrepancies are largely due to the damaged corner. The surviving portion primarily details the western coast of Africa and the eastern coast of South America. The map was signed by Piri-Reis, an Ottoman Turkish admiral, geographer, and cartographer, and dated to the month of Muharram in the Islamic year 919 AH, equivalent to 1513 AD. It was presented to Ottoman Sultan Selim I in 1517. In the map's legend, Piri inscribed that the map was based on about 20 charts and mappe mundi. According to Piri, these maps included 8 Ptolemaic maps, an Arabic map of India, 4 newly drawn Portuguese maps from Sindh, Pakistan, and a map by Christopher Columbus of the Western lands. From inscription 6 on the map, quote, from 8 Jafaries of that kind and 1 Arabic map of Hind, India, and from 4 newly drawn Portuguese maps which show the countries of Sindh, now in modern-day Pakistan, Hind and Chin, China, geometrically drawn, and also from a map drawn by Columbo, Columbus, in the western region, I have extracted it. By reducing all these maps to one scale, this final form was arrived at, so that this map of these lands is regarded by seamen as accurate and as reliable as the accuracy and reliability of the 7 seas on the aforesaid maps. Unquote. There is some scholarly debate over whether the 20 charts and mappe mundi in Piri's inscriptions includes the 8 Ptolemaic maps, the 4 Portuguese maps, the Arabic map, and the Columbus map. From one perspective, the number of charts and mappe mundi used by Piri equals 20, while in the other, it could mean a total of 34. Some have claimed that the source maps were found in the ancient Library of Alexandria, based on Piri's allusions to Alexander the Great, the founder of Alexandria, Ptolemy I, who ruled Alexandria in the 4th century BC, and Claudius Ptolemy, the Greek geographer and cartographer, who lived in Alexandria during the 2nd century AD. Gregory McIntosh states, quote, Arab writers often confused Claudius Ptolemy, the geographer of the 2nd century CE, with Ptolemy I, one of Alexander's generals. Piri-Reis has undoubtedly made the same error, resulting in his believing the charts and maps were from the time of Ptolemy I instead of Claudius Ptolemy. Unquote. Section 2. History. The map was discovered serendipitously on 9th of October, 1929, through the philological work of the German theologian Gustav Adolf Deissmann, 1866 to 1937. He had been commissioned by the Turkish Ministry of Education to catalog the Topkapi Palace Library's non-Islamic items. At Deissmann's request to search the palace for old maps and charts, the director Halil Edhem, 1861 to 1938, managed to find some disregarded bundles of material, which he handed over to Deissmann. Realizing that the map might be a unique find, Deissmann showed it to the Orientalist Paul Kahl, who identified it as a map drawn by Piri-Reis. the discovery caused an international sensation, as it represented the only then known copy of a world map of Christopher Columbus, 1451 to 1506, and was the only 16th century map that showed South America in its proper longitudinal position in relation to Africa. Geographers had spent several centuries unsuccessfully searching for a lost map of Columbus that was supposedly drawn while he was in the West Indies. After reading about the map's discovery in the Illustrated London News, United States Secretary of State Henry L. Stimson contacted the United States Ambassador to Turkey, Charles H. Sherrill, and requested that an investigation be launched to find the Columbus source map, which he believed may have been in Turkey. In turn, the Turkish government complied with Stimson's request, but they were unsuccessful in locating any of the source maps. The Piri Reis map is currently located in the library of the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, Turkey, but is not usually on display to the public. The map was depicted on the reverse of the Turkish 10 million lira banknote of 1999 to 2005, and of the new 10 lira banknote of 2005 to 2009. Section 3. Analysis. The map is a Portolan map, as shown by the 4 compass roses, too large and too small, from which lines of bearing radiate. Some analyses assert that the map is an azimuthal equidistant projection centered on Cairo. But a 1998 analysis by Stephen Dutch of the University of Wisconsin Green Bay shows a better fit with a point near the intersection of the present-day prime meridian and the equator. There are extensive notes in Ottoman Turkish around the edges of the map, as well as some interior detail which is mostly inaccurate and fanciful. The Iberian Peninsula and the coast of Africa are rendered accurately. As for the Americas, the northern portion of the South American coast is also fairly accurate and positioned correctly with respect to Africa. Much of the Caribbean is also mapped fairly accurately and appears to reflect Columbus's maps of the area. The area representing North America bears almost no resemblance to its real coastline, which is unsurprising since by this time it was still almost totally unexplored, except for one projection which might be Newfoundland. An island labeled Antilla may actually be Nova Scotia, since it has a note attached which refers to the legendary voyages of St. Brendan.
Nova Scotia? Canada?
Canada, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. There is some suggestion that this area may represent the Asian coast. Island groups in the East Atlantic are accurately placed, but are depicted out of scale. Although there are frequent claims for the extreme accuracy of this chart, McIntosh, in comparing the Piri Reis map to several other Portolan-style maps of the era, found that, quote, the Piri Reis map is not the most accurate map of the 16th century, as has been claimed, there being many, many world maps produced in the remaining 87 years of that century that far surpass it in accuracy. The Ribeiro maps of the 1520s and 1530s, the Ortelius map of 1570, and the Wright-Molyneux map of 1599, quote, the best map of the 16th century, unquote, are only a few better-known examples, unquote. The Antarctic coast. There are 2 major discrepancies from known coastlines: the North American coast mentioned above, and the southern portion of the South American coast. On the Piri Reis map, the latter is shown bending off sharply to the east, starting around present-day Rio de Janeiro. A more popular interpretation of this territory has been to identify this section with the Queen Maud Land coast of Antarctica. This claim is generally traced to Arlington H. Mallory, a civil engineer and amateur archaeologist who was a supporter of pre-Columbian transoceanic contact hypotheses. Though his assertions were not well received by scholars, they were revived in Charles Hapgood's 1966 book, Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings. This book proposed a theory of global exploration by a pre-classical undiscovered civilization based on his analysis of this and other ancient and late medieval maps. More notoriously, These claims were repeated in Eric von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods, which attributed the knowledge of the coast to extraterrestrials, and Gavin Menzies' 1421, the year China discovered the world, which attributed it to supposed Chinese voyages, both of which were roundly denounced by both scholars and debunkers of fringe works, but which attracted huge popular followings. A more sober analysis of these claims was published by Gregory McIntosh, a historian of cartography, who examined the map in depth in his book, The Piri-Reis Map of 1513. He was able to find sources for much of the map in Columbus's writings. Certain peculiarities, such as the appearance of the Virgin Islands in 2 locations, he attributed to the use of multiple maps as sources. Others, such as the errors in North American geography, he traced to the continued confusion of the area with East Asia. As far as the accuracy of depiction of the supposed Antarctic coast is concerned, there are 2 conspicuous errors. First, it is shown hundreds of miles north of its proper location. Second, the Drake Passage is completely missing, with the Antarctic Peninsula presumably conflated with the Argentine coast. The identification of this area of the map with the frigid Antarctic coast is also difficult to reconcile with the notes on the map, which describe the region as having a warm climate. It should be kept in mind that maps of the period generally depicted a large continent named Terra Australis Incognita, of highly variable shape and extent. This land was posited by Ptolemy as a counterbalance to the extensive continental areas in the northern hemisphere. Due to a lack of exploration and various misunderstandings, its existence was not fully abandoned until circumnavigation of the area during the second voyage of James Cook in the 1770s showed that, if it existed, it was much smaller than imagined previously. The first confirmed landing on Antarctica was not until 1820, and the coastline of Queen Maud Land did not see significant exploration before Norwegian expeditions began in 1891. In 1513, Cape Horn had not yet been discovered, and indeed Ferdinand Magellan's voyage of circumnavigation was not to set sail for another 6 years. It is unclear whether the mapmaker saw South America itself as part of the unknown southern islands, as shown in the Atlas Miller, or whether, as Dutch thought, he drew what was then known of the coast with substantial distortion. But in any case, serious scholarship holds that there is no reason to believe that the map is the product of genuine knowledge of the Antarctic coast. Could be anything. It is 1:25.
Oh. But I'm so awake.
Yeah.